Hello everyone and welcome! Today we are going to learn how to sew a fabric pie carrier that is reversible and has no visible seams. Then you'll just have to bake a cake, a pie or a casserole and to bring it along in your freshly made bag for your picnic or your evening dinner at some friends. Ready to sew? We will need 2 big rectangles of fabric. I have this beautiful African wax and this lightweight cotton to which I added interfacing to give it more weight, but you don't have to do it. It's nice to choose fabrics with contrasting patterns since our bag will be reversible. We will also need 4 stripes of fabric to make the handles of the bag, 2 in each fabric, and you can use interfacing as well to give it more weight if needed. Alors, first, we will place the stripes right sides together and we will pin them. Then we will stitch them at about 7 or 8 millimeters from the edge with a securing stitch at the start and the end. That's important. Do not stitch the ends of the handles, this way it will be easier to turn them inside out. So let's do it. I place my first handle under the presser foot of my machine, I make a securing stitch and I stitch all the way at about 7 millimeters from the edge. For instance, you can align the right side of your presser foot on top of the edge of the fabric. Without cutting the threads, place the fabric on the other side to stitch the other edge. This saves time and thread. When you have stitched both handles, you will need to turn them inside out. I am going to use this easy loop turner that I love because it's so easy and useful. The link is in the description box below if you are interested. Of course, you can use a safety pin or a chopstick instead. If you have used fusible on your handles, like I did, it's not very easy to turn them inside out, yet it is possible as you can see on the screen. Now, of course, we will have to press everything flat, but first we need to roll the fabric in our hands so as to really open up the seam and bring it on the edge. When it's done, you can press and top stitch your handles if you wish. I will top stitch at about 1 millimeter from the edges, which will make the handles beautiful. Also, that will keep them flat over time, a little like a permanent ironing, if that makes sense in English. Take your time, be thorough, this kind of detail makes all the difference and really brings your work at a professional level. Speaking of improving your skills, I do have online sewing courses, but I am afraid they are in French. Would you be interested in me translating them into English for you? There we are, our handles are ready. We have to attach them to the bag. First, make a mark at 13 centimeters from this edge and 13 as well from that edge. We are going to place one end of the handle against this mark. Choose which side you'd like, with or without pattern, and in any case make sure to really place it against the mark and to pin it with 2 pins at least so it doesn't move. I do the same thing now with the other end of the handle and then I pin the other handle on the other side of the bag. Voila! Now we are going to place our second rectangle on top of the first, right sides together, with the handles inside like a sandwich. Remember, right sides together. And we pin the whole thing. Be careful to only pin the small sides of the rectangles and not the lengths. Also, if you wish to really have a beautiful bag in the end, make sure that everything is properly aligned. Both rectangles should be placed one on top of the other without any gap. Now we are going to stitch both sides with a sewing machine. The sewing allowance is about 1 centimeter. Make a securing stitch at the beginning and the end. Be careful not to stitch on your pins. Also take your time and when you come across the handles, go back and forth with the machine to really secure them to the bag. Now, the next step is not compulsory, but first we need to take the time to cut all the threads and also to cut the corners. Make sure not to cut your seam, of course. When it's done, we are going to turn our bag inside out. Remember that this step is not compulsory, but of course I highly recommend you do it. We are going to take the time to really open the seams and to press them on the right side. I am also going to top stitch the edges, which will be flat and neat. Remember, these little details make all the difference, and it's a pleasure to have a well-finished project. So we are going to top stitch at about 1 centimeter from the edge. You want it very regular and steady. Before turning the bag on the wrong side again to finish stitching it, we are going to make a little mark with a textile pen in the middle of each side. You can make a little snip with your scissors, you can place a pin, or you can thread mark it. Use what works best for you. So now have a good look. Here we have our mark in the middle, and we are going to align both sides on top of it by folding the bag on itself. Once again, have a good look. I have aligned the first side on the mark and I pin it in place. When it's done, I do the exact same thing with the other side of my bag and I pin it properly in place as well. Both sides are placed next to each other, they touch each other, but they are not placed one on top of the other. Now we are going to make the same thing on the other side, and because I wanted you to have a good look at the technique, I have filmed it with a side angle. Voila, we have pinned everything in place on both sides, and now we are going to stitch everything with the sewing machine at about 1 centimeter from the edge, with a securing stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. For the first side, we stitch all the way through, just like I showed you. For the second side, we are going to let an opening of about 10 centimeters. This will allow us to turn the bag inside out later. So, securing stitch first, a seam, another securing stitch. I lift my presser foot up, I put it down 10 centimeters away, securing stitch, another seam, and a final securing stitch. So let's start with the first side, the one without opening. Be careful not to go too fast, there are a lot of layers. Also make sure that both edges that are inside really keep touching each other while you sew. You don't want any gap to be created. To do that, I am going to use a pin that will help keep the fabric in place when it goes under the presser foot of the machine. Also, don't hesitate to sew back and forth several times there to really make the seam strong. That's the place where the bag will open and where you will insert your dish, so it needs to be sturdy. A few securing stitches and we're going to make the same thing on the other side. Remember that the only difference is that you have to leave an opening of 10 centimeters. Voila, I lift my presser foot up, I move the fabric, I put the foot down again, I make a few securing stitches again, and then I finish stitching my length and do a final securing stitch. Before turning the bag inside out, we're going to cut the 4 corners. Alright, when it is done, we turn the bag inside out through the little opening on the side. And voila, that's done! Of course we are going to need to press the bag flat, but first we really need to turn out the 4 corners perfectly. Also, we will need to close the opening with a few invisible stitches made by hand. If needed, you can place a few pins to help you. Would you be interested in a course where I would teach you all the different stitches that exist, made by hand, made with a sewing machine, luxury hand finishes, and so on? Let me know in the comments down below. So when we are done hand sewing the right side, we are going to turn the bag on the wrong side and make some stitches as well there. Because our bag is reversible, it's going to be as beautiful on the inside as on the outside. Therefore, you will be able to use your bag on both sides, the inside and the outside. The hardest decision is going to be which side you'll use today. Now, the only thing left to do is to bake. And look at my cute little helper. He couldn't resist the pleasure of playing with the dough and sampling it at the same time. Also, I forgot to film our pie, so you will never know whether it looks like this one or not, but never mind, now we are good to go. Enjoy your picnic and your nights out with your friends. Happy sewing and happy summer! Bye bye! À bientôt!